Hello and welcome. Today is Wednesday, the 6th of August 2025, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. Delighted to be joined today by live video link by Vanessa Beeley and from Lebanon, and also Sandi Adams. So welcome to both of you. Now, we've got a very packed news today. We're going to stick on the theme of immigration. And it was clear from our broadcast on Monday that a lot of people are extremely interested in the subject. They're extremely concerned. They're also very concerned at the way they perceive that the British government is suppressing any reasonable commentary and debate on this subject, but we're certainly going to dive into the mix and report. Vanessa's also going to be having a look at what's happening in Cyprus with a very large influx of Israelis as a result of the conflict in Israel and possibly other reasons. We're going to have a look at a very interesting tribunal which took place some time ago when a man challenged the training that he was experiencing via the Ministry of Defence. And we're also going to be having a look at UAE and its dark roots into surveillance and surveillance companies. And finally, we're going to end on the subject of extremism, but we are going to try and lighten the mood before we leave you today. So let's get started by having a look at a video of the Home Secretary talking or not talking, depends how you see it, on the subject of immigration, migration.
Provide a safe route, and then that's somehow going to stop people going on boats, I just think is not understanding the way in which these criminal gangs work. Whatever you do, you have to go after the criminal gangs and you have to tackle these dangerous boat crossings. That's what we're doing as part of the returns pilot that we've agreed with France. That's also what we're doing as part of the stronger law enforcement. It does mean that people who apply lawfully in France will be part of that exchange.
So it's all down to criminal gangs. The government really doesn't know who's behind it. They've no idea that their own policies on mass migration throughout the world could possibly be helping the movement of people, nor does she apparently recognise the UK, the US and the Western's role in fomenting wars across the globe as pushing people from one country to another. It's simply, according to Yvette Cooper, down to a few gangs. So she's barely believable. But let's have a look at Nigel Farage, who's been getting very, very hot under the collar about migration and other issues.
Turning a blind eye, not telling the British public the truth. But when it comes to protecting children, we're not hiding behind a flawed piece of legislation. We genuinely intend to protect, in particular, women and children. And I made this point 2 weeks ago, but I'll make it again today. None of these young, unidentified males that are coming into this country should be free to roam the streets. They should be detained ahead of them being deported. And that is absolutely what we stand for as a party, and we mean it. And we'll do that to protect the British people. We have simply had enough. Okay, moving on. I have a list of questions. Let us start with Henry Zeffman, BBC.
Thank you very much. Can I just take you back to something you said right at the start? You talking about the government and the Online Safety Act, and you said they claim that protecting children is the sole purpose of the Online Safety Act. So you seem to think there is a real hidden purpose. What is that?
Well, if it was to protect children, why on earth would an elite police force be set up to monitor what people say online about events such as what's occurred in Warwickshire just last week? Why on earth are we seeing the extent to which online material has been censored, including, I was hearing this morning, even historical comments about Richard III?
So So the point I'd like to make here is that the focus back on individual men coming across in boats, and these have got to be detained and deported, when the real policy, mass migration, vast numbers of people, is coming through successive governments. And Nigel Farage has been well aware of this for years. To deal with the problem, we need to deal with the government policies. And not only are we talking about vast numbers of people on the move, many of them due to war in their own country, but huge amounts of money being wasted. This was a report in the National. UK wasted 38 billion on migrant arrival programs, and that was the cost over 10 years. And the actual report that article is referring to is this one from Global Exchange, The Future of Welcoming in the UK. And note that it says that the UK policy on landscape on integration has often been characterised by inertia and what it says is a tangled web of responsibilities, in particular in relation to devolution, where local government has powers but few statutory responsibilities, and where funding flows are limited and uncertain. So in this crass report, it's trying to get the public to believe that the problem to do with migration is the fact that we haven't done enough European-backed devolution so that local regions can control the migration. No. The problem is the government's own migration policies in the first place, which is accepting huge numbers of people on one hand, which is unsustainable for the country. On the other hand, they are stirring up wars overseas to help promote the migration. Sandi, let's bring you in. And you've been hearing from some local people their concerns about migration and its effects in particular areas in UK.
Yes, thanks, Brian. Yes, I mean, I've been contacted by quite a few people this week about what's going on in the UK, and particularly in Weston-super-Mare, which has been they've got a council of sanctuary there. But I want to kind of focus at the moment. I'll be coming back to that a bit later in the show. But what I want to focus on this morning is, first of all, is the I think people are worried about the speed and volume of the people coming in and the lack of public engagement, and that I will back up a bit later. But there is a problem within the migrant camps in France, with a lot of infighting between sectarian groups of people. And I'm just going to, there's a migrant who was shot dead amid an increase in the violence in the camps in northern France this week. So I just want to sort of just have a little bit of a clip to let you see what is going on. They seem to be armed, and we don't want this here. And that's what this clip is all about.
Worth noting here is these migrants often stay in groups. The Afghans, the Iraqis, the Eritreans, and so on often stick together. It's certainly what we saw when we were there at the height of the crisis there in 2016. Sometimes there is tension between those groups. So this fight involved two groups, Eritreans and Afghans. Another brawl erupted later nearby. A couple hundred people got involved, more than 20 people sent to hospital. Police were called in, and now the Interior Minister has announced today that he is sending in police reinforcements to the Calais area. At one point yesterday, someone pulled out a gun and started firing. At least 5 migrants are reported to have been shot. 4 remain in critical condition today. The victims are all said to be between the ages of 16 and 18. And this morning, French media are reporting police are looking for one suspect, a 37-year-old Afghan man who they believe was the gunman. There's always a sort of ebb and flow of tensions in Calais, Michael. Right now, it seems it is again at a high point.
Now, it's well documented that Western interventions, in the Middle East have exacerbated under the banner of regime change. And we know that a lot of Western hegemony has caused a lot of the extreme Islamic stuff. And we've just got to understand that there is a role that the United States and the British have played in this. But even so, we've got to realise that there is a dichotomy of humanitarian help for these people as well as our national security. So that has to be looked at. And the next slide is there's the Jean-Christophe Couvé who was there in the migrant camps, and he said they are armed. It's a real mafia with networks going all the way back to Iraq, and unfortunately this is the case. And we can't. Obviously, it is the West has a lot to blame for this. I mean, when you look at how did these extreme groups appear, and a lot of it is to do with Western hegemony and going into these countries and causing dissent. So I think we can't be blameless in all that, but equally the people of Britain are genuinely worried about all of this, and I think they have reason to be so. And you look at Yvette Cooper, the police. She's now saying the police should reveal suspects' nationality, and of course we've got the worry now of digital ID being brought in as a reason. It's problem, reaction, solution yet again. So where is this all going? Well, we've got to have this thing where we do welcome people, but this is a huge volume and it's happening very quickly. And we know that the government are pushing this agenda through the office of the International Office of Migration. And so, we've got the worry also is that there's different factions here at play. You've got the Sunnis, the Shias, and the Afghan soldiers that came over here that were we had this whole data breach that happened in 2022, and they've had threats, in their own country, in the UK. They've been these Afghan soldiers were brought over here, and the data breach has really left them very vulnerable amongst extreme Sunni factions that we have here already. So I think they are a little bit, worried. And I think I've got a slide about the spreadsheet of the super injunction that with the relocation scheme of Afghan data, which has put them in a difficult position here. So where does this leave us? And I know people are really worried. And that Afghan migrant cover-up has cost the British taxpayers a massive amount of money, because obviously compensation has had to be given. And, all of this, we have to look at the cost, as you were saying, Brian, the cost of all of this. And there's another slide here. The UK spends a record 5.38 billion on asylum system, with bills up over 30%. So all of this, when we are in a cost of living crisis, is going to cause problems. It's got to be said, and people are genuinely worried. And I think they have every reason to be worried.
Sandi, totally agree with that. I think the other point that we have to keep gently working through is that you could say what is happening. Many people do say that what is happening is sheer incompetence by the government. But if you really dig into the policies and you see the amount of money and effort that is going into not only stoking up the wars overseas, but also then assisting these migrant flows through Europe and into the UK in particular, this is not accidental. This is deliberate policy in order to bring a very large number of people into the UK. And then any person with a modicum of common sense would say, this is nothing to do with the colour of people's skin. It's to do with the volume of people coming into the country. And there is inevitably going to be problems due to the sheer volume. So to me, it's obvious that this is calculated agenda by the government. And then you say, why would they want to create fear and breakdown in UK? Well, the simple answer to that is they need the chaos and the breakdown in order to bring in the more draconian agenda. And we can see that coming in across the board. So we are witnessing orchestrated breakdown, and the migrants are being used as a key weapon to do that. So a lot of consideration and debate needed, and certainly we need to hold the government to account. But Vanessa, welcome to the news. Of course, it isn't just UK that's experiencing problems with the influx of people, and Cyprus has now come into the bracket in relation to Israel.
Yes, it has. If we can just put this quote up on screen. This is from, it's a speech from the Third Zionist Congress of 1899. David Treach, born in Germany, a founder of the Zionist movement, one of the founders, believed in practical colonization, not negotiations with Palestine in order to colonize Palestinian land. From 1917 onwards, Jews shouldn't seek refuge in lands favorable for European settlement, as they would encounter resistance in every such country. They also won't be able to efficiently settle in tropical regions. Given these conditions, Cyprus is the most suitable location for Jewish settlement. While the island isn't a magnet for European settlers, its climate is suitable for Europeans, and notably, it's in close proximity to Israel, serving as a gateway to it. And if we look at this, looking back in history, this is from the New York Times in 1935. David Treach dies. They call him an outstanding Zionist. Of course, that is not necessarily a compliment in the view of those who condemn what the Zionists are doing to Palestinians. And he urged practical colonization of Palestine, agricultural and economic experts. So that brings us very rapidly to what's happening in the last few years. This is very recently an article in Al Mayadeen. Cyprus faces outcry over Israeli real estate surge and sovereignty fears. Let's have a look at what one of the politicians in, I think it's Greek Cyprus, said. AKEL leader warns of organized land acquisition at a recent conference of Cyprus's leftist Progressive Party of Working People. The Secretary General, Stefanos Stefanou, issued a stark warning, likening the pattern of Israeli real estate acquisitions in Cyprus to the early stages of settler expansion in historic Palestine. This is not just investment, it mirrors what happens in Palestine, gradual land takeover, he stated, adding that key purchases are being made in strategic areas that could eventually undermine Cypriot national control. And this, as I said, is not necessarily recent, although it seems to be ramping up. This is the president of Greek Cyprus, neighbors, friends, strategic partners. This was a tweet he put out very recently, a forward-looking discussion with my good friend, President Isaac Herzog, on addressing challenges and creating opportunities for our neighborhood. Cyprus is a reliable, stable, trustworthy partner committed to regional cooperation with the Israel, the Zionist flag on the post. And this was back from 2024 in Daily Sabah. Zionism's grip on northern Cyprus grows stronger each day. And what did they actually say within the article? A couple of very important points. First of all, they agreed with the idea that specific areas are being effectively occupied by Zionist individuals and corporations that have been increasingly investing in northern Cyprus, with a particular focus on the Iskele region in close proximity to Israel. Jewish investors are even establishing their own housing projects and neighborhoods. And then basically the more disturbing article that's come out very recently in Hebrew media, this is in Israel Hayom. Northern Cyprus is also an Israeli problem. And if we look at the text within the article, I highly recommend people reading it because, of course, what are they doing? They are raising the concerns. Cyprus recently marked the 51st anniversary of Turkey's 1974 invasion, which, of course, was engineered by Kissinger at the time. The history on that is very interesting. In practical terms, they say Northern Cyprus functions as an international no man's land, enabling Turkey and terrorist groups like Hamas and Iran's Quds forces unrestricted operational freedom. So obviously now they're framing the entire subject as a potential for an Israeli need to conduct, as usual, preemptive self-defense for Israeli national security. And they go on to say within the article, they talk about the potential for an operation to liberate northern Cyprus. So if we could just have up the next slide. It's there. Thank you. Threat reaches critical threshold. Israel, in coordination with Greece and Cyprus, must prepare a contingency operation to liberate the island's north, eliminate air defense systems in northern Cyprus, destroy intelligence and command centers, and finally remove Turkish forces, restoring internationally recognized Cypriot sovereignty. And they go on to describe how the operation would be and what they would call it. The contingency plan could be termed Poseidon's wrath, after the Greek god of the sea, highlighting maritime dominance, which of course means trade dominance effectively. Turkey, and this is interesting because now they're effectively bringing in the framing of Turkish weapons of mass destruction. Of course, previously we saw them preemptively strike the Osirak nuclear reactor in 1981 in Iraq, and in 2007 they preemptively struck an alleged nuclear reactor project backed by North Korea in Syria. Now, and of course, Iran is the 30-year gag on nuclear production. Turkey currently constructing the problematic Akayu nuclear plant on its Mediterranean coast. This should be internalized. So here in this article, effectively what they're doing is framing the potential for military intervention in Cyprus. Of course, Cyprus is very much occupied by British military and air force that has been used to sustain and assist the genocide in Gaza, allegedly surveilling Gaza for hostages, but of course providing equipment to the Zionist forces and surveilling Palestinian civilians inside Gaza that, of course, were then targeted by the IOF. So very disturbing times at the moment. The fact that they are declaring that Turkey has weapons of mass destruction. We know that Cyprus for a long time has been the money laundering center for the region, for the Israelis, even for the Turks themselves, but also more recently, as I'll talk about in my next section, for the Al-Qaeda elements now ruling and destroying Syria on behalf of the British, the UK, the US, and Israel. But it's also about, in my opinion, the wider war of preventing Turkish hegemony in a region where Israel sees itself as being supremacist. It's already prevented neo-Ottoman expansion into Syria by Turkey. Now it is targeting effectively Turkish-held territory in Cyprus, threatening to push Turkey out of a very strategic position in the Mediterranean, which of course is jam-packed full of hydrocarbons and oil resources, and also challenging Turkey in the north of Lebanon. So we're seeing at the moment, in my opinion, a war between Greater Israel and Greater Turkey, if you like, which will take in Cyprus at some point, in my opinion.
Vanessa, thank you very much for that comprehensive report. It is quite extraordinary, isn't it, that you would have thought reasonable people would be at least trying to deal with the chaos and the war in Gaza before unleashing another front. But here we are in Cyprus talking about effectively dealing with the north of the island. Now, Israel can only be making these policies and this type of rhetoric. They can only do it with the full support of particularly the UK, because of the UK's military bases on the island, but also the support of the international community. So what do you think we're seeing here? This is Israel But I would suggest Israel can only do this because it has the full backing of what we will call the rules-based international order.
Well, effectively, what we're seeing now, and we've touched on this in previous UK column news, is almost overarching the regional conflicts. For example, in West Asia, I mean, you're talking about it's extending to Cyprus, but of course, it's extended into Lebanon, into Syria, into Iraq, into Iran. Israel is bombing Yemen, so Israel appears to have absolutely no problem with overextending itself in the region to achieve its Greater Israel project, but also on behalf of the UK and the US to basically redraw the borders. The Sykes-Picot borders from 1917, very dear to the British and the French, are effectively being extended and redrawn to take in the global corridors, so the economic hubs, the transit routes through, for example, Azerbaijan. We're seeing the US, Israeli, Turkish buildup in the Zangezur corridor that is now being challenged by Russia and Iran. Cyprus, of course, is a very important route from West Asia into Europe. So it's incredibly strategic, both for Turkey and for Israel in its run towards achieving regional hegemony with the help of the Arab Gulf states. And so I think, it's really part of a much, much wider war that's ongoing at the moment. And it is all about redrawing the economic borders and securing and straddling territory that incorporates those economic corridors for the future, both to compete with China, Russia, and Iran, and effectively to isolate Iran eventually, if you look at where the corridors are now being targeted.
Vanessa, thank you very much. Really excellent and quite extraordinary what's happening there in Cyprus. We'll definitely go into this issue much deeper in UK column extra after the news. Let's move on to happier things, and that must be the UK column On Location event coming up on Saturday, 18th of October. Now, we have been saying that tickets have been selling fast, and we were telling the truth because we've sold well over half the tickets now. And if you haven't bought a ticket, we're going to encourage you to do that because we would love to see you there. But also, as we've said many times, a sellout of this event will give us the stepping stone to what you have all asked us for, which is a weekend event in 2026 to celebrate 20 years of UK column. It's almost difficult to say that, actually, because I think we can say the time seems in some ways to have gone so quickly, but here we are. We're coming up to 20 years of the UK column, and we've only been able to do that with the tremendous support of people, not only in UK, but worldwide. If you're not a supporter of UK column, then get onto the UK column website and have a look for the click here, and that'll bring up the menu for you to make a donation or to join us as a monthly subscriber, paid subscriber. And that not only keeps us going, but helps us to expand. So very, very important. And of course, you can also make purchases from the shop as a way of supporting us. Now, on the subject of tickets for the event, speaking of the shop, a little video here to say that if you click on shop, the tickets will come up on screen. You can select your option. There's a ticket only, or there's a ticket plus evening meal, and you can make your purchase through the UK column website. And also we are offering online stream tickets as well. So if you can't come to see us in person, then have a think about watching online from the comfort of home. But first of all, huge support to everybody that's bought tickets. We are, well, I'm lost for words, and it's true because we haven't yet announced all of our speakers, and yet we still have this tremendous confidence from our audience that it's going to be a major and very enjoyable event. So thank you for that confidence. Now, tonight, another one of Germ's episodes. This is with Jamar Rufolf. We'll be talking about the chemistry of Zyklon B. This is historical and deep analysis. So that is out tonight at 7 o'clock. And on Thursday, we've got Ben Rubin talking with Escape Key on reverse engineering of the architecture of totalitarian control. So 2 deep interviews there, but I'm sure well worth watching. Now, I'd also like to say we regularly get very nice emails, and I would like to just recognise Alexia from the Netherlands, who took time to email me a couple of days ago in the first place. But she says she found UK Column on YouTube or Rumble in late 2020 or early 2021. And, excuse me, she realised in the spring or summer of 2020 that there was a scamdemic going on, and she went searching for answers and came to the UK Column. And as a result of that, Alexia is still a supporter of UK Column and has taken the trouble to tell us so. So thank you very much for that. And again, I'm going to say a huge thank you to people wherever you are in the world. And we know there's now a huge number of countries watching UK Column. Now, just a little reminder that a week or so ago, I put out this interview with Lynn Lopez Salcedo from Zionist to Anti-Zionist, Memories, Dreams and Visions of Peace. We've had a very good response to this interview, and I'm looking forward to doing more with Lynn and also with other friends and colleagues and other people from the Jewish community that have contacted the UK Column in order to give their views and concerns as to what's happening in Israel and Gaza. And just to reinforce that, this is going back to 2016, but this is a collection of people's thoughts confronting Zionism, a collection of personal stories, excuse me. And this document was put out by Jewish Voice for Peace. And we'll make sure there's a link for that in the show notes so that you can have a look at that downloadable copy. Now, we'd also remind people that weekend of the 22nd, 25th of August is the Hope Sussex event. This is camping, music, talks, and people coming together to talk about serious matters in UK, but also to be together for fun and enjoyment. If you use the UKC20 code, you'll get a 20% discount on the ticket. And to press home the point, UK Column will be there to put a stake in the ground for free speech. And remember that this wonderful event has already been smeared by mainstream journalists. Clearly, they don't like good people coming together. Now, let's move on to the subject, excuse me, of the government playing with our minds. And I'm very grateful to a UK Column viewer for sending me this article. Now, unfortunately, I haven't got a date on it. I think it was a few weeks ago, possibly a month ago, but it's from Scottish Herald. Daniel Powell Tribunal, Glasgow civil servant loses case. Interesting that the headline doesn't give any clue as to what's going on here. But if we delve into reports around this, all becomes clear very quickly. So Mr. Powell, a civilian based with the MOD in Glasgow, was forced to read a paper which suggested that white people are psychotic, cannot be reasoned with and must be destroyed. And as a result, he sued the government for race discrimination and harassment, claiming the way that diversity and inclusion is being implemented within the MOD breaches the Civil Service Code, as he considers that what's happening represents a left-wing and Marxist political ideology. But his case was dismissed because while the tribunal found that the Psychosis of Whiteness paper had been part of the material given to managers within the MOD, Mr. Powell had apparently misread it. He was not bright enough to understand what it said. And effectively, the tribunal concluded that the MOD had never directly disseminated the document to staff, had never used it in training, and did not endorse its contents. But effectively, the gentleman claimed the MOD had been taken over by subversives. But the judge said that basically it was important for democracy that papers like the one in the case challenge people's views, and as such, its use by the MOD could not be found to be discriminatory against its staff. And I think the final comment by this lawyer, Andrew Gibson, says it all, representing the MOD. The lawyer said that the claimant simply had a skewed view and sees himself as a spokesperson for downtrodden white men. Now, I'm just going to remind our audience that some time ago, I've put here circa 2019, apologies, this is not a good image, but this was a grid that the MOD circulated, which was apparently to get people to look for indicators and warnings against people who were right-wing extremists within the military and the army in particular. And my point here is that this type of policy is not only alive and well, it's being accelerated by the government in order not only to capture our minds, but to control the way we think, we speak and think. And on the subject of manipulation of our minds, I'll add to this little section the fact that on the parliamentary website fairly recently, the description as to the role of an MP was changed. Now, luckily, one of our supporters put in a Freedom of Information request asking why the description was changed and where the orders for that change had originally come from. And I have to say that the answer that came back was very dismissive. It says that the Freedom of Information Act 2000 only provides you with the public with access to recorded information held at the time of the request. It does not extend to providing confirmations or explanations which are not already held in recorded form, nor are we required by the Act to create information to answer your question. It goes on to say that said, it may help the person asking the question to know that the web page they referred to is managed and updated by the House's Inquiry Service. So this is hugely important, that the actual description as to the official role of an MP was changed on the website. But when a member of the public asks what this was about, who did this, the answer is effectively a wall of silence. Sandi, I'll just bring you in here because this is really bringing home to us that we're now being governed not only by a cabal, but it's a cabal that's prepared to manipulate information and data in order to deny us knowledge and or to skew our views on particular subjects. Could be immigration or it could be politicians. What do you think?
Yes, exactly. I mean, we've noticed it throughout the years, for decades now, NGOs, change agents coming into communities with that in mind, with this idea of actually changing and skewing people's minds to certain ideologies. And I think, this open infiltration, as you know, through Common Purpose, it's been happening for years and years. And what we see is a very pernicious, almost, it is an attack on the UK and Europe, actually, the whole of Europe. It's an attack on the West. It's to destroy the West. And we see this every single day, different policies that are destroying our infrastructure. I mean, you look at the climate stuff, it's destroying our farming. Farmers are not farming now because they're being prevented to by climate change policy. So we see this with the immigration as well. And I don't know whether we're going into what's happening locally now.
No, we'll come.
We just
Sandi,
generally.
we'll come back to that. I just wanted to reinforce this point that the manipulation of our minds is an attack on the public, and we have to understand the government's attacking us. Vanessa, let's bring you back in, because if we're talking about an attack on our minds, part of that big attack comes through surveillance. And when we look into the bodies that are involved in surveillance, we can often come straight back to the Israeli Unit 8200, which I think forms part of your report here.
Yeah, it does. But perhaps even more sinister than that, you're absolutely right, is to focus today on the UAE, the role of the UAE in furthering the Zionist agenda, both regionally and in Cyprus. And of course, the normalization between Israel and the UAE was very much engineered by Tony Blair back in 2015, as we've reported on here, when he introduced various members of the UAE leadership to various members of Netanyahu's cabinet. And that relationship then developed into UAE being one of the first to normalize with Israel. And so this is an article when I was looking into the Cyprus issue, and for people to know that I will be writing a very in-depth article on Cyprus for UK column, which will go into a lot more detail about what's going on. But this article, which talks about the outsized role of surveillance technology in the Israel-UAE Abraham Accords. And then if we look at what they actually talk about with reference to the Abraham Accords, far from a peace milestone, the Abraham Accords represent the public formalization of a long-standing covert partnership, as I said, very much begun by Tony Blair, between two governments with interests in population control and surveillance. We've been covering Unit 8200 for some time. The UAE purchased and deployed Israeli surveillance technology well before the adoption of the Abraham Accords. Leaked emails in 2018 revealed that the UAE signed a contract with NSO, which of course is Pegasus Spyware, and Israeli cyber war company, to license surveillance software as early as August 2013, including the infamous Pegasus spyware. And then this is where it gets, in my opinion, very sinister. So effectively what the UAE is doing is acting as an outreach settlement country for Israel, for Israeli expansion. One of the primary companies involved in this very shadowy surveillance tech is the Dark Matter Group, if we can just put the slide up, an Abu Dhabi-based cyber. Can we just go back one, please, Brian? Thank you. Cybersecurity firm Dark Matter recruited some NSO staff and former Israeli operatives from Unit 8200, offering $1 million salaries per year and luxury homes in Cyprus. So here is the UAE effectively enabling the settlement or the expansion of Israel into Cyprus. And of course, Dark Matter Group, which I will write more about in the article, were responsible for or linked to the assassination of Khashoggi. They were also linked to Project Raven, which in fact was established including or employing NSA employees to spy not only on internal dissidents, who were then arrested and subjected to torture, but also effectively on American individuals and on governments outside of the UAE. It was a massive scandal. And this is something that I think we're seeing now in the Gulf states, but particularly with UAE, that they are effectively taking on the mantle of authoritarian AI development with the collaboration of Israel and the Unit 8200 and all of the other military-linked spy agencies that are working and have been working to bring about the genocide of the Palestinians or an intensified genocide from October the 7th, developing smart cities, for example, in Hebron. And now the UAE will be used, along with other Gulf states, to effectively extend that AI dictatorship influence that originates from the Zionist tech industry in Israel. And as I mentioned in the previous report, also worryingly, the Cyprus connection to NATO's Syrian caliphate. Interesting that Jonathan Powell, Tony Blair's former security advisor and point man in the Middle East, is back in Damascus today speaking to Jolani's Al-Qaeda administration members of, and we know that he has an office, a permanent office in the presidential palace. But it's been reported, and I've heard it from various sources inside Syria, that Jolani, since he took control of Idlib in the northwest of Syria prior to the coup in December 2024, he was siphoning Syria's wealth and is continuing to do so through Turkey and into Cyprus, where the Al-Qaeda extremists have bank accounts and are basically coordinating to establish territorial presence there and to take gold and wealth out of Syria, because, of course, Jolani understands that his role there will be temporary.
Vanessa, thank you. We can see pieces of a very big jigsaw coming together. I will say to our audience that if they are still surprised at the power and influence of Israel in this internationalist sense, remember it was Francis Maude from the Conservative Party here in the UK many years ago that suddenly announced a partnership with Israel through security that was linking GCHQ Unit 8200, which is Vanessa's mentioned. So our intelligence and our security services were being directly linked with Israel. There was no debate in the House about this. And of course, the other bodies that were brought into that agreement were the universities in the UK. So all of this assembly of a joint power base with Israel was visible, hidden in plain sight in the UK many years ago, and both Conservative and Labour governments have continued to push this amalgam of these very powerful globalist interests. A lot more to discuss, but thank you very much, Vanessa. Now we're going to return to UK, and Sandi, this is the point at which you've been hearing concerns from local people, and the subject is the creation of mosques.
Yes, some people from Weston-super-Mare got in touch with me, because I know there's cities of sanctuary or towns of sanctuary or councils of sanctuary all over England now. But Weston-super-Mare is a council of sanctuary, and they've received a planning permit. The people have realised there's a planning application going through for a very large building, a very large mosque, which is occupying three buildings in the centre of the town. And as you can see, and from the slide, it's quite a big. It's a very big mosque, and actually, it's the biggest mosque between Bristol and Bridgewater. And what's interesting is that they're talking about the expansion of the population of Weston-super-Mare. So this is all part, as we know, of the plan that the government have for replacement migration. And, the people of the UK have always been incredibly tolerant of migration, of people coming and being accepted within our communities. So I don't believe that people are inherently racist here. Obviously, there are some. We've got Tommy Robinson whipping things up and Farage, but on average, I've looked at this 7-page document which has been put through to oppose this mosque. I'm just got the migration and, of course, it's all the 2030 agenda, as we know. All of this is a plan, and it's rolling out. And it's having the desired effect, because actually what they want is civil unrest. So we've got to be so careful. We've got to be very measured. And what I was impressed with was these people from Weston-super-Mare who have very, very valid reasons for questioning this particular planning application. they've produced a 7-page document to back up the petition that they raised of over 1,000 people against the planning application. It's right in the centre. It was the Residents' Association that did this. And I have to say, looking at it, it was a really, really considered and not inflammatory document. But it was put in the terms of the planning application for the mosque. The key thing is that North Somerset Council has removed all the comments about this planning application because they consider them offensive. That is because people were voicing genuine concerns, but they won't let anybody see the comments. So where is this coming from? So who's deciding what can and cannot be said here, and what is offensive? We don't know. The debate, is in the conversation, which nobody is allowed to have. Now, I don't believe that everyone in Weston-super-Mare is far right. There's an implication of that from the council here. So it does speak volumes. And the thing is, there should be dialogue on all this, and there hasn't been. And that's the main problem. It's all about speed, volume, and dialogue. There's been a lack of dialogue. And this whole programme is happening. I mean, the immigrant programme has been happening at great speed and at great volume, and that is the problem. It's not people being NIMBY or racist or anything else. It's people being genuinely concerned about what is happening in the UK, and we have to emphasise this. So the Residents' Association got in touch with me because they knew that the UK column could voice their concerns in a measured way, and hopefully this is what we're doing. So there's been a lack of transparency. It's all been rushed through. The people are reacting to this way, the way it's been handled. It's not that they're far right. The Council of Sanctuary is a national and international network, but most people in Weston-super-Mare have never heard of it. Why is this? And why is the Council of Sanctuary or the Cities of Sanctuary so secretive? So we have to look at all of this. So let's look at the City of Sanctuary Charter. Now this was brought in 2022 to 2025, and it seems to be financed by lots of NGOs, the National Lottery, all sorts of, it's very, very shady where it's all come from. And it's just kind of tipped up in all these cities of sanctuary. There's always an office for the City of Sanctuary Charter. And that they bring people in and they talk about stuff, but it's all about, we've got to be more inclusive, we've got to do this, and it's a lot of DEI, but there's no real dialogue about what is really happening, and that's what people are concerned about. So let's have a look at this. The next slide. Yeah, a lot of it's been brought through the National Planning Policy Framework, and again, it was first published in March 2012, and it really is. If I could have the next slide up. With that, it's all about. I'm just trying to read this because it's a bit small, but it says, it's. North Somerset has always been and always will continue to be a place that celebrates and welcomes ethnic and cultural diversity. Well, of course it is. But at the moment, this mosque, they're worried about it because it's going to be huge. It's going to be 24/7 with about, I think it's 341 it's got the capacity of 341 men, and the men have, a different entrance to the women. The men are going to be occupying this mainly, that as it says on the planning application, that they removed all the comments, and people are worried. Also, it will encompass a morgue, a 24/7 morgue. But more than anything else, I think people are worried that this is a Sunni mosque, and that with the tensions that are already firing up with the the secular stuff that's going on in France, the troubles that they're having in the migrant camps, between different sectarian facts, we've just got to look at what is really going on here, because people are worried because they've already taken in the Afghan population from when Kabul was very speedily evacuated, and they brought the Afghan migrants here who were involved with obviously the Western side. So you've got tension there. And people are worried about that, very rightly worried about that. Now, there's also the idea that this is a bit like, I think the government are really pushing this through different NGOs. I know Weston-super-Mare have got involved in the Sanctuary Awards. Now, this is all money-making stuff. I mean, it's all some kind of, you get government funding, you get awards for bringing lots of people in. And it seems to be very highly organised. So you've got the Sanctuary Awards, and they mention within the Sanctuary Awards, they mentioned the theory. Could I have the next slide, please? This is their values. They've got inclusivity, openness, participation, inspire, integrity. All of this sounds very, very good, but to bring this into a very sleepy seaside town is going to cause tension between different factions there already within the UK of Islamic people, but also between the people that live there. So this is why, unfortunately, we are a tolerant race. We always have been, but this is kind of pushing people to be really concerned. Now we've got the theory of change within that document of the one that I mentioned earlier, and it's the theory of change. They're pushing this whole theory of change. And the theory of change is really the NGO that's pushing a lot of this. It's a theory, and I'd like to just flag up this video which explains what the theory of change is.
A theory of change is a powerful tool that helps an organization articulate the connection between their actions and their mission using the language of outcomes. A theory of change helps you define your intended outcomes and the connections between them, identify the why and how of your organization, create a foundation for evaluation, program development, organizational change, or strategic planning. Communicate more effectively with internal and external stakeholders.
So what I'm seeing here is it is another sort of, if you like, agents of change coming in to really push an ideology, and it's also heavily funded, and we need to find out who. And of course, when you look at it all goes back to Agenda 2030. And what we're seeing here is a rollout of the infrastructure of Agenda 2030 within our communities that will, if we're not careful, end up being a bit of a disaster, in my view.
Sandi, thank you very much. Very emotive subject. The key thing is that we have to have dialogue in this country, and we have to have understanding as to what's really going on. I'm going to end today's news by a very quick look at countering extremism, because, of course, we come back to this business that anybody who dares speak out about what's happening, not only here in UK, could be in Gaza or could be in Iraq or Iran, you are going to come under the network of extremism. So this is the government's Commissioner for Countering Extremism, Robin Simcox. And I just wanted to have a little look at what he said in part of the commentary on the website, the government website itself. He says, as the government's independent advisor on extremism, I've long observed a persistent debate around what motivates terrorism. Some point to the role of ideas. Others emphasize socioeconomics, personal trauma, or mental illness. This debate matters enormously for how we shape our counter-terrorism policies. And he goes on to say that to bring clarity to this question, I've commissioned Dr. Donald Holbrook to conduct forensic research examining the electronic content collected from 100 UK terrorists over several decades. His findings published today are unequivocal and significant. Now, this is just one paragraph from the report, but I've decided to bring this to the fore. It says the evidence is clear. And he goes on to say that what Dr. Holbrook discovered is striking. Terrorists do not merely dabble with extremist ideology. They immerse themselves in it. They actively seek it out. They consume, debate, and even produce ideological content that guides and justifies their actions. So according to the Commissioner, it's all very clear. But let's remember what we discussed in Monday's news when Ben Rumid brought up this policy exchange document, which was entitled Extremely Confused, the government's new counter-extremism review revealed. And this is because the document was basically saying that the government just had no idea what behaviour was what. It was confused. It was chaotic. It's a really interesting report to read. But whilst this tells us the chaos in government, the Commissioner himself is appointing a man linked to this organisation, the International Centre for Counter-Terrorism. And this is a think tank based in The Hague, Netherlands, providing research, policy advice, training and other solutions to support better counter-terrorism policies. Well, here's, if we just pop that back on screen, here's Donald Holbrook himself. And if you look at this organisation, you quickly find that it's fully in bed with the European Union's own hub for the prevention of radicalisation. So we are not dealing with a UK-generated policy. We are still locked into an EU-based policy. And as UK Column has said for many years, this is the reality of Brexit without the exit. Now, to end on a lighter note, but still with some teaching content, let's have a look at Yes Minister talking about defence. I think we've shown this before, but I think it's an important one to review.
Bernard, what is the purpose of our defence policy?
To defend Britain.
Is to make people believe Britain is defended.
The Russian.
Not the Russians, the British. Russians know it's not. It's for all our simple, ignorant people. The aim of the defence policy is to make them feel secure. Bernard, we have a magic wand. It is called Trident. Nobody understands anything about it, except that it will cost £15 billion, which means it must be wonderful. All we have to do is write a cheque and then we can all relax. But if people in government start talking about it, in the end they'll start thinking about it. They will come to realise the problem, the flaws in the reasoning.
There is one thing, though. This TV broadcast he's doing, suppose he uses it to announce his new policy.
We can't. First it have to go through Cabinet and the House.
Well, he can do that. But if the Prime Minister's made up his mind...
Then he must unmake it.
But he's the Prime Minister.
He has his own car, nice house in London, place in the country, endless publicity, and a pension for life. What more does he want?
I think he wants to govern Britain.
Well, stop him, Bernard.
So comedy, humour, laughter, but a very strong message there that the people of Britain are to be deceived, they're to be made to think what the power base wants, and even the Prime Minister himself or herself is going to be controlled to do the bidding of those behind the scenes. So whilst we may laugh at that short clip, I think there's a lot of very serious comment and analysis has gone on in the background, which reflects exactly on the position today. We will leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us wherever you are in the world. And if you're a UK Column member, we'll be back in a few moments for UK Column Extra. Vanessa and Sandi, I look forward to speaking in more detail about the subjects of today's news in our Extra. And thank you also for joining me on the news today. We'll leave it there. Bye-bye.